Hi, and welcome to another edition of Danny Brown Talks Phoenix. I am your host, Danny Brown, and today I am joined by Rachel Lutowski of Dynamic Leadership Solutions. Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
How you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
Good,
Thank you.
good. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself
Sure.
and Dynamic Leadership Solutions?
Sure. I have been in the Valley for about 13 years, and my primary focus as a coach and trainer and consultant is working with small to mid-sized businesses and helping them with their human performance improvement challenges.
Okay. And what are human performance challenges?
Improvement
challenges.
Sure.
What are those?
So that could range from anything from a coaching situation where we have maybe a supervisor or a manager that is challenged with, being the most efficient and effective in their position. It could be having frontline staff that needs some type of training that would help them to be more effective in their role. So everything that I do is very focused on, we used to call them soft skills. And it's really focused on teamwork, communication, all of those things that really help an organization meet their bottom line profitability goals through their people.
Yeah, so it sounds like you do a lot of training and are really focused around helping people kind of develop a culture and develop the systems that they need to put in place to help develop people.
That's correct. Yes, it's all about developing people.
How do you go about coaching and mentoring your clients?
Well, it depends on the type of coaching that's needed. So a lot of times we begin with a process of discussing what the problems or challenges are, and then we kind of dive into what are the goals that particular person is looking to achieve. Or if I'm hired by an organization, there's that meshing of looking at what the director needs or what upper management needs, and then tying that to the skill gaps that person that's being coached has, and then trying to close those gaps, basically.
So when you meet with corporations or teams, then you kind of do you start with the top and then work your way down and see what management and the leadership team needs first, and then kind of go from there?
That is the perfect case scenario. That doesn't always happen.
Yeah, I'm sure it rarely happens.
It rarely happens. But what we do try to focus on is finding those people within the organization that are the key decision makers, but also understand that their people are their most valuable asset. And then I have an analysis process that I go through to try to determine if we're working with just a department, we're working on the department. Obviously, we're always tying in cultural goals. We have to know what the focus of the organization is. But if we're working on that department, we're focused on that. If we can do a top-down approach, that is the perfect scenario. I absolutely love that. Most of the time, we're kind of starting in the middle. If it's a smaller company, I'm pretty much permeating the entire organization if they're smaller. So I'm working with all of the people that work in that company.
So when you say smaller to mid-sized companies, what does that look like?
So I go by employee size. That's kind of my measurement. So a small company would be anyone that has 250 employees or less. And then mid-size would be 250 to like 800.
Jeez, that sounds really large.
Yeah, to a lot of people it does. And so everyone kind of has their different measurement on how to determine what they consider small to mid-size. And in the past, I've worked with a lot of really large companies too. I just have a real passion for small to mid-sized businesses, so I try to focus, in that area.
I would think the impact would be greater on small to mid-sized businesses because you can really kind of get in there. Whereas, I mean, I would even say at 250 employees, like how do you really make a difference in a company that size to really influence their culture and their goal setting?
It's a big process, and it's a long-term process. And that's why through the years I've realized that because I want to see an impact, I love those small companies. and even the mid-sized companies, but there are a lot of measures that you put in place, and especially if you're working with a great company that understands, tying culture and working with different departments and making sure that everything that you're doing ties together, and then you're able to measure the ROI at the end. Again, that's a perfect scenario.
Sure.
But it is tougher when you are working with, those kind of larger organizations where you don't always get to see the impact that you're making on a day-to-day basis.
I would imagine that that's probably the case too, because you mentioned it's a long-term kind of constant thing that you're working on, and in our society where it's immediate, instant gratification. How do you go about convincing people that this leadership, this development that you're doing is something that they need to constantly be working on and always be striving for? It's not just a 2-hour session and then you're done.
Yeah, we call them the one and dones. Come in and do a training and then leave. I'm not a big fan of those. People do those.
People get super psyched for a couple of hours and then they fall back into bad habits. I know I'm guilty of that. You read a book or you listen to a speaker and you want to take all that stuff back to the office, and then life gets in the way and you just fall back to old routines.
And that's so true for all of us. I'm the same way too. I mean, I think that's human nature, unfortunately. With the clients that I work with, it takes a long time to build a good, solid relationship. And when I find a company that has a leader that really understands that growth and development and growing their people is important, then we mesh in this relationship and we're able to talk about the benefits of having a long-term process put in place. And so I'm able to share, okay, well, if we do it this way, you can probably expect these results. But if we do it this way, then your results can almost be, exponentially greater.
Sure.
Depending on what it is that you're trying to do, whether it's development or coaching or anything like that.
So say, you're working with a company and they've bought into kind of your system. What does it look like? How are you helping people strategically plan, do goal setting, and kind of stick with it throughout time?
So we start out on the front end, like I had mentioned just a few minutes ago, with an analysis. So we're looking at, spending a couple of hours together, actually digging into some really tough questions. The first question is always, what is it that you're looking to accomplish, obviously? And then I'm digging deeper. What is the current culture? What was the previous culture? Just, 6 pages of questions really is what it is. And
are these like proprietary questions that you've come up with over time?
Well, a lot of them, they're not proprietary. I've been using them through the years, but I've started to collect them and compile them based on what I feel is the most effective way to analyze what might be needed within a company. And so sometimes it's not, all 60 questions. Sometimes we can answer the questions we need in 20 and really figure out where we need to go. But from that point forward, then what we're doing is we're trying to, determine what our ROI should be. So one of my key processes is always to look at the end first. So I'm a big Stephen Covey fan. I know you know that.
Oh, yeah.
And we're always talking about begin with the end in mind. And so I'm always having those clients look at what is it, what's the outcome that you're trying to achieve, and then let's work backwards. And sometimes it means that we need coaching, we need development, we need to tweak the hiring process, and sometimes it's none of those things. And then so what I'm able to do is refer them to other processes or systems that might actually help the organization meet their goals.
How do you overcome objections? For example, you do coaching, and some of the questions that you may ask may be either somewhat personal, or people may just dig in their feet because they don't believe in some of the stuff that you're doing. How do you kind of get people to buy in?
Sure. There's a pretty extensive process on the front end with coaching clients. And again, we begin with the end in mind.
Sure.
We're talking about what are our ultimate goals that we'd like to accomplish. I'm getting to know that client and understand their behaviors and what drives them and what motivates them. And then we talk about what coaching looks like with me, because there are a lot of different coaching processes that can be used.
Right.
And we always want to make sure that that coaching client meshes with the coach, right? So if I don't feel like I'm the best fit for someone, I have other coaches that I refer to.
Oh, that's great.
So once we mesh, we talk about the process, what it looks like, and then we actually discuss commitments. So what is the commitment? And the entire time that we're going through that interviewing process, as I call it, I'm interviewing them and they're interviewing me.
Sure.
And we get to the point where we decide, are we going to enter into this agreement together? And sometimes they're not ready. Sometimes I can see already that they're going to push back, especially if an organization hires me to coach as opposed to someone who's paying out of their own pocket or maybe a small business owner. So we want to get to that commitment point. And then they actually have a commitment document that they have to sign. And that commitment document outlines all of those things that you're bringing to my attention in that, what does the coaching relationship look like? What do I expect from you and what can you expect from me? And so what happens when we get to potentially pushback or an impasse, we bring that coaching commitment document back up and we talk about it and we talk about what the challenges are. And most of the time it's a great learning process for them because people push back based on fear and they're afraid of something. They're afraid of either succeeding or they're afraid of failing. And it just allows me the opportunity to let them know I'm your accountability partner here. I'm here to support you. I'm not here to hurt you in any way. And usually we're able to get through those situations pretty quickly.
I think having an accountability partner is really fantastic. I mean, people have it, at the gym. You always want to go and work out with someone so that you have a friend there to support you and motivate you to get there. So having that in the business world, I think, is fantastic. Now, do you work with individuals one-on-one? So say someone works at a corporation or in a company that doesn't provide services to have coaching. Would you work with somebody on an individual level?
Absolutely, yes. So we have, and I'll share a little bit about the different types of coaching that I do. I can work within an organization where the organization is paying for the coaching, and the coachee is the one that's being coached. And usually that's a situation where they're considered a high potential, and we call them hypos, a high potential to move into a leadership position or something like that. And then the other way that I work with clients is someone can hire me on their own. So I do work with a lot of entrepreneurs that are, maybe they're skilled in a certain area, but they don't necessarily have the leadership capabilities or the skills that they need to succeed in their role in their entrepreneurial venture. And then I work, with small business owners and then people within those organizations as well.
So have you ever had, an experience where you're working with an entrepreneur or a leader and you've discovered that they probably shouldn't be an entrepreneur or a leader? Is that something? Yeah.
Yes.
and what do you do in that sort of scenario?
Well, what's interesting is that as a coach, I have to put my judgments aside and we're focused on the goals of that individual. And so it isn't always my place to say, my opinion or to give my judgment about where they're at in their adventure or whatever it is that they're doing. It's my job to just simply support them. What I will say is that there have only been 2 people in my career in the past 24 years that I felt that way about. No, not at all. That I felt that way about. And in the end, they were able to identify that for themselves. And I think that is really, not to toot my own horn, but that's an exceptional coach supporting that person and asking the right questions and getting them to figure that out. You still guided them and
you coached them to have that epiphany.
Right. That was my job. My job isn't to assess whether they, should be doing what they're doing. If they hire me to help them meet a goal, that's what we're that's what we're focused on.
I think one of my biggest fears in business and being an entrepreneur is that I'm a total hack, and that, Gary Vaynerchuk talks about A players and B players,
Yes.
and we've been in this bull market for 10 plus years. The economy's been going well, and I just have this huge fear that I'm this B player pretending to be an A player.
I don't think you are.
Well, that's
I'll tell you
that's
that.
good.
I don't think you are. Not from what I've seen
Good,
anyway.
good. So, what are some interesting, companies or interesting cases where I would imagine that it's hard to prove or show ROI. You've mentioned that several times. So,
Sure.
Outside of seeing a shift in the attitudes of the people that you're working with, how do you prove the return on investment?
It can be really challenging to prove ROI with people. It really is. And it's always been something that, as people that work in my industry, we're always focused on that, because it's important to be able to do that. And numbers talk, and we try to attach numbers to things.
Sure.
And so what I tend to do, depending on, whether it's a training program or it's coaching or it's something else, is to try to attach numbers to something. So let me give you an example of what that might look like in a coaching scenario. A lot of times with my coaching clients, I will have what we call a 360 team. So a 360 team is 5 to 7 people that work very closely with the coachee, and they're there to give me feedback on their improvement in processes or behaviors or things like that.
Is that people within the company that make that up?
It's people within the organization, right? And so what tends to happen is the process goes like this. After I've gone through that whole process with the coachee and we've made our commitments to each other, I'm meeting with the 360 team, and I'm meeting one-on-one. And I'm actually formulating questions that we're going to be using throughout the coaching process with the coachee. And so they're given a rating scale. So let's rate them from, 1 to 5 or 1 to 3. And you tell me, where do you feel that they are right now? And all of this is based on their goals, right? What we're trying to help them improve. And so I meet with them at the beginning and I get their scores. I meet with them midpoint and I meet with them at the end. And they're asked during that 6 months or that 1 year period to be consistently thinking about situations where they're observing that this person is changing behavior or they're changing process or whatever the case may be. So at the end, our ROI is to be able to present to upper management and to the coachee this information, this data. And so they've got a number attached to it, and maybe they have some independent comments that are attached to it as well. And so that's one way that we can actually prove that ROI and prove that, prove that they're actually making changes. It's a similar process with a training program as well, but we're always trying to attach a number to it.
Yeah,
it makes it easier.
Yeah, with leadership, entrepreneurs, owners of businesses, it all comes down to dollars and cents and numbers.
It has to have a number.
It absolutely
does. We have to attach a number to everything.
Unfortunately.
Right.
I know, speaking from our experience, because, we work with you, our team does, that, I don't care about the numbers. I care about the attitude of our team. And I can just see, because we're small, the impact that you make on our staff after you've come and paid a visit to us.
It's fantastic.
So, whether the numbers make sense or not, it makes sense to them, and so therefore it makes sense to me.
And you're seeing a difference in your culture and improvements in your culture. That's excellent.
Yeah, just in how long have we worked together?
I want to say it's been over a year, maybe a year and a half.
Yeah,
now.
like the last 18 months, the culture that we've developed. We've been very specific or purposeful in who we've been hiring to join our team, and have really shifted away from hiring based on skill set to hiring based more on attitude and personality. And I think I learned from you that that's more important, that you can teach skills, you can teach people to do you can teach a monkey to do a process. You can't teach attitude and personality.
That's right.
And I don't think that I had that before, working with you.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
So what are some things that people can do if they don't have a coach, but they want to elevate their game and they want to have goals and they want to reach those goals? January is just around the corner. It's October now, and so if people are getting ready to start planning for 2019 and start setting goals, what are some things that they can do to help them stick to those goals if they don't have an accountability partner?
So this is one of my favorite topics. You know that. I'm very passionate about goal setting.
Yeah.
And having a dream and knowing what it is that you want to accomplish.
Well, if you don't have goals, you're just floundering through life and you're not working towards anything.
Absolutely. Super exciting topic for me. So many answers I could give you right now. We could go on for hours.
We'll give them all.
Right, you want them all. So I think one of the best things that people can do, especially if they don't want to hire a coach, or maybe they just can't afford it, or whatever the case may be, there are a lot of reasons for that. But one of the best things to do is to find someone that you align with that can be your accountability partner, a friend, a significant other, a spouse, and just proclaim to them that you are very interested in making some changes and you want to set some goals, and you're wondering if they would be willing to be your accountability partner. And the second part is kind of laying some ground rules about what that looks like, especially if you ask your spouse to be your accountability partner.
Sure.
There have to be rules around that, right? You don't want to be getting upset at the person when they call you out on something. So just kind of
maybe your spouse isn't the best one to
could be a friend. Maybe a friend is a better person that you could ask. My second suggestion for goal setting after you've chosen an accountability partner is just to be really clear about your goal. And I suggest starting with maybe 1 or 2 goals, right? And once you've decided what that goal is, again, begin with the end in mind and think about what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So a lot of people...
Would you recommend them, sorry to interrupt, but be small goals that are achievable, or are you doing like Darren Hardy, the big audacious goals?
I think it depends on the person.
Yeah.
If someone isn't used to goal setting and going through a process, and I'm giving you like the bare minimum of a process here, kind of the detail that we go into when
Absolutely.
We're talking about goal setting for your team. But when you're starting out and maybe you haven't set a lot of goals, I would start with something doable. So a lot of people want to set fitness goals or health goals, eating more healthfully, or maybe losing some weight. That's fine, but you have to have a process for that. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to lose some weight," and then expect it to fall off. You have to have step-by-step process.
Right.
So I usually suggest that people who are looking to accomplish those big, hairy, audacious goals, those BHAGs that we call them,
right.
that you have a serious accountability partner and you create a process for yourself. And that's where a coach might actually be really helpful for you.
Sure. And I would even say that for the big, hairy, audacious goals, that it's probably a bunch of small stuff that you have to do on a regular basis to get there. So you have this giant goal in mind, but you need to have the 100 little goals that you have to do on a daily basis to work with the end in mind, like you keep saying.
Right. So the third step then would be to break it down. What are those little tasks or those small things that I need to do to actually meet that goal? And then the last important piece is be mindful of it every single day. There has to be a plan every single day. If you're wanting to achieve something, regardless of what it is, it needs to be something that you're very conscious of every day.
And you probably have to have a good reason why as well. I would imagine that your why needs to be pretty powerful. Otherwise, you'll just let it go.
I'm a big believer in why.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. And
know your why.
It's hard sometimes for people to figure out, why they do what they do.
It is.
And I think a lot of people, if they miss a day, they just decide to skip the whole week. What advice do you have for people if they're trying to hit these goals on a daily basis, these smaller things, and we're all human, or we go on vacations.
Right.
What do you suggest for people to get back on track?
So I work with a number of clients that have personal and professional goals that they're working on. And regardless of whether it's either or, I usually ask them to remind themselves every single day, what is the reason that I'm doing this? Why am I doing this? Why is this so important to me? So whether you're trying to eat better or exercise more or lose weight, starting your day, I'm a big believer in starting your day with gratitudes and setting the intentions of your day.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you want to accomplish and be focused on? And that should be a part of it. So why is it that I'm trying to eat more healthfully, or why is it that I am trying to lose this weight? And if you goof or make a mistake, forgive yourself and get back on the horse.
Yep.
And don't wait till the next day, especially when it comes to eating. A lot of my clients are focused on health and fitness, and that's a big part of their life. And so if you eat something that you shouldn't have, don't assume the whole day is blown, right? Because I call those excuses. They're excuses. And
well, nobody's 100%. So,
right.
80% of the time, if you're
absolutely
on point, that's going to be way better than 0.
And one of the important goal setting tactics, and I've shared this with your team, is to use the SMART acronym.
Mm-hmm.
It's been around forever. SMART, and the R stands for realistic, making sure that your goals are realistic. If you're assuming that you can eat clean 100% of your day, is that realistic? You have to decide if it is or not. And if it's not, then unfortunately you might be setting yourself up for failure.
Right. So you're operating with the end in mind and
mm-hmm.
having that plan and knowing yourself.
Absolutely.
So are you a believer then on setting your goals and tackling like the easy stuff first so that you can have small wins? Or do you believe in the mindset of, eat the frog, like
mm-hmm.
take on the tasks that you hate the most first thing and then go on to the easier stuff?
Sure.
Which school of thought?
School of thought for me is a combination of both, and it really has to do with planning. And as you know from the work with your team, we talk a lot about more long-term planning, and not just planning your day, but looking at your week
mm-hmm.
and looking at your month and looking at your quarter and looking at your year. So I usually recommend when people are planning for their week and they have 2 or 3 big goals that they want to focus on, they have to make sure that those goals are accomplished by Friday, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is their goal. Now, those little things that are easy to do, what tends to happen is they eat up our time. And I just had a meeting last week with a coaching client, and she's a very high-profile attorney in town, and I've been her accountability partner for years. And we talked about how getting, falling back into the habit of coming in and sitting down and checking your email first thing and getting eaten alive by email,
yep.
which tends to happen.
All of a sudden, the first 2-3 hours of your day are gone.
Right. So it's kind of a combination of two. We still have to do the little things, but I truly believe that you need to plan for those little things. And those big chunks or those big goals for the day should be the things that you're diving into first. Now, the reason that I can't give you a definitive yes or no that you asked for is because what if you come in and you're just feeling like you just can't get motivated for some reason, no matter what you've done your affirmations, you've planned out your day, you're supposed to start on this big goal. I would say then go and do some of those little things so that at least you're getting something done
mm-hmm.
and you're not sitting there spinning your wheels, looking at your tasks saying, okay, I'm not sure what
Facebook
to do, or Facebook, right, evading, procrastinating.
Yeah.
So it just depends, but you have to be very disciplined to know that, yes, I think those big rocks, as I like to say, are really, really, really important to focus on first.
Can you go into, you mentioned rocks, and
yes.
we had a session not too long ago where you were just, describing this bucket and had all these rocks and then gravel and sand and water. I really like that analogy. Would you mind kind of explaining that a little bit?
So we were talking about in the context of our week, and you can really use this analogy in the context of a project or a quarter, a month of the year, the entire year, a day. But the concept is, and it's been around for years, you take this bucket and you have rocks and you have pebbles and you have sand. And the rocks represent those big goals or those big things that need to get done that tie to your ultimate role in the company or the ultimate focus of the organization. The pebbles are those little tasks that tie into the rock, right? And then you've got the sand. Those are all of the little things. Some of the sand supports what you're doing. Some of it doesn't. Some of it is
a lot of it probably doesn't.
Facebook, right? Or searching Facebook or social media, trying to procrastinate on things. So the concept is that if you put the big rocks first into the bucket, which means you're planning first, right? You're planning for those big things, those big chunks of time during your week. And then you put the pebbles in and the sand kind of fills in the cracks. That's the most productive way to accomplish your goals and get things done.
That's fantastic. I really like that analogy, and kind of when you mapped it out for us, it kind of everything kind of made sense and kind of clicked in. Kind of to wrap up and kind of tie everything together, what are just a few recommendations that you have for people who are looking to get started, that they may not be where they want to be in life. They may not have a leader like me that brings in, you as a coach and help develop. So what are, just a few recommendations that you have for people to kind of get their life on track and get started with planning and goal setting?
There are a lot of amazing resources right now out there. A lot of free information that people can find on the internet. There are a lot of coaches that, sell programs for a really nominal fee that they can actually do self-starting. And another way, if they're local, they can just give me a call. I do complimentary assessments with people. And what that means is I sit down with someone who's potentially interested in coaching, or maybe they have a business and they'd like to provide some type of employee development to their employees, or maybe they just want to talk to me about what is it that I don't know when it comes to managing people. I spend an hour with them and give them some tips and tricks and some ideas that they can take and use on their own, no strings attached. In the end, if they decide that maybe they want to dig into that further, then of course we can build a business relationship off
That's
of
wonderful.
That. But tons of resources online, different really good coaches that are out there that have online programs that people could actually do.
How do people avoid, I'm sure there's a lot of scams though too, and a lot of, send us money, send us $1 a day and, we'll make you happy type of.
Don't ever do that.
Yeah.
Don't ever do that.
How can people make sure that they're working with someone or a program that is, certified and real and not just fluff and garbage?
Certifications are really important in the coaching world. And so if they can look for a certification and then research what that certification means and stands for, that's definitely a good way to go.
So doing some homework,
doing some research. I always tell people to look at reviews and find out what people are saying about this particular coach and this particular program. You can really glean a lot of information from that. And, lastly, a lot of people call me and ask me my opinion.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with sharing my opinion on those programs.
And if people wanted to reach out to you, where can they find you?
So they can reach me at my website, www.dleadership.com. And they can also email me at rachel@dleadership.com. or give me a call. They can find my phone number on the website as well.
And we'll make sure we put all of that in the show notes.
Perfect.
Yeah, so
Great.
people can reach out to you if they'd like.
That'd be great.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for taking the time to meet with
Thanks.
us. Really appreciate it. And thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you got a lot of great tips and tricks out of our conversation and learn how to set your own goals and reach them. So thank you so much.